Chapter 16, Part 2. So we want to talk a little about the tissues and the organs of the lymphatic system. They do play an important role here. So one thing to remember is, and I don't know if you've had physiology yet, but we have body fluids. We can start with the interstitial fluid or plasma, wherever we want to start. Let's start in the plasma. We've got plasma in the blood vessels that comes out of the capillaries and becomes interstitial fluid. And it brings with it nutrients and it brings in good stuff, and then some of that fluid re-enters the bloodstream and carries some of the wastes with it to the bloodstream. But some of that fluid does not return to the bloodstream, and it enters vessels called lymphatic vessels. And when it does, we now call that same material that used to be plasma, then became interstitial fluid. Now it's in a lymphatic vessel, and we call it lymph. So lymph is fluid. It's very similar to blood plasma, and in fact it's going to be dumped into and become blood plasma again in a little while. After becoming lymph, it's going to move through the lymphatic vessels and then re-enter the circulation of blood. So this is all fluid that's leaked out of the blood vessels and becomes interstitial fluid, and some of that moves into the lymphatic vessels and becomes lymph. So here we see some tissue, and we've got a little blood vessel, a little capillary, and some of that fluid is oozing out, and some of it goes back into the blood vessel, and some of it moves into the lymphatic vessels, and it begins its journey from wherever it is in the body. And all of these, we have tons of these little tiny lymphatic vessels that merge and get bigger and bigger and carry that fluid ultimately back to the blood vessels that are just about to enter the superior vena cava. This is a lymph node. We have hundreds of these in different places of our body. This one's been sliced through so we can see. But the fluid from all of these lymphatic vessels drains into these little lymph nodes throughout your body. And in the lymph nodes, these are lymphoid organs. We're going to see that there are lymphocytes in the lymph nodes, and they're then coming in contact with the interstitial fluid. So if there's a bacterial infection somewhere, the bacteria are making products that are going to move through that fluid and come into the lymph node, and maybe there will be a lymphocyte there that recognizes that marker, that molecule, and becomes activated and goes and initiates an antibody response or a T cell response. So when we talk about the tissues and organs of the lymphatic system, we have a couple of lymphatic organs. The red bone marrow and the thymus are the primary lymphoid organs. Those are the places where lymphocytes mature and develop. And then we have secondary lymphoid organs. Lymph nodes, like we were just looking at, is a secondary lymphoid organ. The spleen is also. The tonsils in your throat are secondary lymphoid organs. And in the mucosa, we have MALT, mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue, that is also lymphoid tissue and is also processing this fluid. The immune responses depend upon recognizing antigens. So we should really talk about what antigens are. Antigens are molecules that the body can recognize and say, that is not something made in this body. It's foreign, it doesn't belong here, and I'm going to make sure that it doesn't hurt this body. And they attack it. So these are molecules or parts of molecules, and they are recognized by antibodies or by other proteins, and on an antigen there are little places. The places that have the specific shape that is recognized is called an epitope. So big macromolecules, large proteins, peptidoglycan, components of cell wall. All of these are very good antigens. So this can include viral proteins, fungal proteins and structures that are found in protozoa. Food and dust can also have antigenic substances in them, things that your body recognizes as foreign and mounts an attack against. So, for example, we have a little cell here, and in the plasma membrane, it has this protein or some kind of a molecule that's in the plasma membrane. This whole protein is the antigen, but this little piece, this one little bump, is one epitope. And over here there's a different epitope, and over here is a different epitope. We can have a specific response to just this one, or we can have a response specifically to just this one, or we can have a response that recognizes all three of them. But each of them are going to be individual and specific and somewhat random also. In other words, who we might have some people that do just one, some people do two, some people do a different two. But a particular antigen, the best antigens have a lot of these epitopes. They don't just have two or three, as we show in this little diagram. But a really good antigen will have dozens or hundreds of epitopes that are capable of mounting and generating an immune response. So we have different types of antigens. Exogenous antigens are bad things that you want your immune system to recognize and target for destruction. Things like toxins from bacteria, components of microbial cell walls like lipid A, membranes, flagella. If you can identify flagella, that's a great way to target bacteria with those flagella. Pili are a target are commonly antigens. We also have endogenous antigens, and these are produced by microbes that are living inside your cells. For example, viruses are inside your cell. The cell is now making different proteins than it used to, but it's still your cell making them. It's your ribosomes making these proteins. But they are made by your cells, and so they are called endogenous antigens. And then we have autoantigens, and these are normal pieces of your cells, a protein that your cells, it's always there. It's always been. It's your genetic material, right? Your genetic material determines that protein. They are part of you, but something goes wrong, and your immune system is recognizing these antigens. So if we're talking about autoantigens, that means that there's an autoimmune response. So exogenous antigens are outside of the bacteria. They might be on the surface or of the bacterium or virus, or they might be secreted from it, or just pieces of it. Endogenous antigens are actually made inside your cells, but under the direction of, in this case, a virus. And then autoantigens are normal components of your cells that your immune system might respond against. In the next section, we're going to talk about the preparation for an adaptive immune response.